So I'm about to go pick up this gentleman from California who's interested in potentially purchasing the Pinky, our pink Lancair 320. And I'm going to pick him up with our brand new Cybertruck. Let's see if it impresses him or if it makes things worse. You never know. He might think I'm loaded. When in fact, I'm just driving my wife's car, right? Behind every successful cowboy is a wife with a good paying job in town. So let's go pick him up. He's arriving on a Southwest flight, and hopefully this will make his trip fun. So we're almost at the airport to pick up this potential buyer for the Pinky. The ride in the Cybertruck is super smooth. Not much noise at all. The Uber driver is tailing me for a while with his camera. It was funny. One day you'll be able to take an Uber with one of these, maybe. Who knows? Or maybe you'll just tell your car to come fetch you. It'll do it all by itself. That's more likely. Maybe Uber has a limited lifetime if everybody has a car that they can summon. Unless you just don't want to own a car. But I don't know if I want to share my car with anyone. My wife is picky. She likes to keep it nice and clean. God forbid I bring any dust in it. So anyway. Round two of trying to pick up the gentleman that's gonna potentially buy the airplane. We'll see. Buddy Mark putting his gyrocopter away while we wait for the Pinky to get started and head over to runway 22. Beautiful day, a little bit of wind, but it's straight down the runway, so we're not too worried about that. Mike has flown this airplane over 40 hours, so he knows what he's doing. Change of plan. They're taking him over to 17 due to the direction of the wind. So good news this morning. Yesterday, a gentleman from California flew out here to Albuquerque to come see our pink Lancair 320, which we have here advertised on Trade-A-Plane.
As you can see, I just changed the status from for sale to pending under contract. He came out, he did his due diligence and gave us a deposit. We signed some paperwork, and so officially under contract with the Lancair 320. That went pretty smoothly. I think that's indicative of our asking price being fair. Obviously, we negotiated. So yeah, positive news here on the Lancair 320. Pinky is going to a new home in California. But that brings me to the next point of conversation, which is to talk about what's the current state of airplane sales. Well, our experience buying and selling airplanes. I got some information from controller.com website, which is showing these graphs of piston single engine airplanes. And as you can see, over the last, let's say since 2015, it looks like, or should I say since 2016, where the inventory seems to peak, it's been a steady downtrend for the number of airplanes for sale on controller.com. What's that indicative is of people getting into flying, people buying airplanes, people not selling their airplanes. It ultimately got down to a low, which looks like it may have been like second half of 2021, and then it's been coming back up steadily throughout 2022. In 2023, it looks like it kind of plateaued, came down again just recently, and now it looks like it's ticking up again in 2024. So based on this graph, I would describe the market as a seller's market, where the sellers have the advantage. Clearly, over the last, let's say 6 years, that seems to have been the case, where the sellers, it's been trending towards a seller's market. And I would describe this area here of 1,000 units of inventory through controller as seller's market, and then coming off the seller's market and now possibly going back into a seller's market once more. So the buyers are confronted with the same problems as we have in the real estate industry, which is not many airplanes to pick from. There's not enough supply, so it's a lot more competitive for buyers. And so let's see if that translates into any other data here on this graph. So we have asking price, and so you can see how the asking prices on average have creeped up. That's normal. I mean, if you know that it's there's not that many airplanes, that you have something that people want, you tend to ask more for it. But it really peaked in 2022. So you can see where supply bottomed here, and that was kind of the second half of 2021, which would have been here. But the asking prices keep rising, and that's because there's always a lag between sellers' expectations and what the market is actually doing. So sellers continued thinking their market was doing good and that they could ask for more and more. It takes a correction for that perception by the sellers to modify their prices. And we can see that the prices have kind of plateaued here, so they're not really coming down. So let's look at another data here. We have the inventory year-over-year variance, and you can see that inventory increased, and then it came back down, and then it increased quite substantially, and now it's back down again. Now there's going to be a certain amount of seasonality to this, the worst time to sell a plane is in the middle of winter, just like the worst time to sell a house is during the winter, near vacations, holidays, where people are more focused on their personal lives. And so just like in real estate, I think the comparison is valid. There's a seasonality to this, and spring is kind of in my opinion, the sweet spot for selling your plane. And in 2024, we can see the numbers coming down here, and that could just be explained by sellers not really putting their aircraft on the market, but we'll see if it ticks up here with this spring-summer season. So all in all, it's looking good. I think that the market is still leaning more towards the sellers having the advantage. But here with the asking price variance, you can see that the asking prices went crazy from 2020 to 2022. Everybody was increasing their asking prices until it peaked here right before actually the inventory bottomed. And now you can see the asking prices have ticked down. They're coming back down to, the variance, I should say. So there's no more behavior where people are continually increasing their asking prices, so that the variance is now descending back to neutral, meaning that they're realizing that they can't get their asking price in a quick manner, that the asking price is perhaps dissuading a lot of buyers. Now, speaking of interest rates and how that impacts aviation, I wish I knew the percentage of airplanes that were bought with financing. My suspicion is that most airplanes are bought cash, and we don't use financing. So that means that the interest rates don't really impact the purchase or the buyer's ability to buy airplanes. I think there's enough buyers that are sitting on cash that just buy cash. I would use my 80-20 rule to describe it, to guess it, I should say, where basically 80% of airplanes are bought using cash and 20% may be financed. But I could be completely wrong about that. It could be, as little as 10% or even less than that. I personally have never bought an airplane with financing. I did look into it a few times, and I just found the whole process to be cumbersome, and ultimately I gave up, and I just used my own cash to finance it myself. So that being said, let's go back to the Lancair 320 that I did a search earlier. So as I said before, the pink Lancair is sold, but it's still showing in Trade-A-Plane. Let's go see what else pops up for the Lancair 320. And you can see that our ad was kind of the only one in Trade-A-Plane for a Lancair 320. We had, there's obviously Lancair, all types of Lancairs available. But in terms of a 320, that was the only one, I think. Lancair 360 here for a lot more than what we were asking. I wish you the best. Let's see, another Lancair 360, nice, for 119,000. Sounds reasonable. We'll take a closer look at that here in a moment. Another one here for 110,000. Let's see, another one here. There's no price. So it looks like there's two 360s for over 100,000. Well, three actually, three 360s for over 100,000, but no 320s. And looks like 120 might be the mean, but let's go and see how this 360 at 170,000 is. Is that an amazing airplane? So let's see here. Well, it's some nice paint, that's for sure. Yeah. I'm getting some pink vibes here. I like the avionics. Looks like a modern avionics there. So basically, I think the idea here is that they're selling the nicest 360 that I've seen online, and maybe that's why they're trying to get as much as 170,000. I still feel like it's a big ask, but hey, why not start high when you have something that looks very desirable, right? And obviously they're using a broker here. And brokers typically get the listings where the asking price is above average. And that's because in order to convince sellers to list with them, they have to give them hope, act on their feelings of greed, that they can make more than they think or that they hope, or even sometimes just agreeing with the value, an unreasonable valuation by the seller. I'm not saying it's unreasonable here. Who knows? The market will tell. We'll see where it ends up at. We might never know what it will ultimately sell for. But I have a feeling that this is on the strong side, even if it's an amazing airplane. Considering that we just saw that the asking prices, there's just some softening, that the asking prices have plateaued, and that possibly the inventory could be ticking up higher. I would go and do that for maybe a month or two to explore the market, see if there's anybody out there that will buy it. But then I would basically relist this and try a more fair, more in line with what the market expects to pay for something like this. So that's the strategy for selling. In our case, we didn't want to mess around with strategies like that, and we didn't use a broker. We just wanted it sold. My partner and I had discussed how things were changing for us. Me personally, because I never really fit comfortably in the airplane. I didn't enjoy flying it, and he had a great time flying it. But he is going to be tied up for 6 months, so he's not going to be flying it either. So we just decided to sell it and come up with a no-nonsense type of price. We felt 72.5 was extremely reasonable, and you can see some of our previous videos to see how nice it was on the inside, and obviously has this unique paint scheme. So anyway, let's go look at this other 360 here for 120,000. Oh, the same broker. So maybe this broker is focusing on the Lancairs. Maybe he has a mailer out that he's sent out telling people he can sell theirs. And that reminds me of real estate. You got a realtor that sells a house around the corner. That realtor is going to immediately do a mailer out to the neighborhood telling them, hey, I just sold your neighbor's house. If you're interested in knowing how much yours is worth, give me a call, that kind of thing. That's a common strategy for brokers in any industry. You leverage what you've already achieved. So it's possible this broker's already sold a Lancair recently and has an insight into the value of what the other one got, but also he may also have residuals. And residuals are basically residual interest from people who were interested in whatever he was selling before, that kind of felt like they missed out. And he has now maybe a handful of residual buyers who are interested. Maybe some didn't like that particular model. Maybe some wanted to negotiate too hard. But that's people he can now reach out to if he can get another listing where maybe he'll find something more compatible with those people's expectations. So it's just how you do business, how you milk the exposure you get from selling an airplane. And interesting story on that is once I actually did it where I saw that an individual, not a broker, but an individual was selling an airplane online. I had saved his contact information, and basically they sold their airplane that was the same as mine or very similar. And I reached out to him afterwards and said, hey, do you have any residual buyers, people that felt like they missed out and they really wanted one? And, you get a lot of not buyer's remorse, but they feel like they missed out if they didn't act quick enough. And they were maybe getting ready to pull the trigger on purchasing the airplane, but they just didn't do it quick enough and they thought time was on their side. So I said, do you have any residuals? He said, yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, if you can get them to buy mine, I'll give you a referral fee. De facto, essentially becoming a broker for my airplane, but they were just an individual selling theirs. And that's actually worked pretty well in my experience. So it's always good to save the contact info of someone who has a similar airplane. It's also a good way to reach out to people who have experience with the airplane. I mean, I'm not going to ask the broker in this case, if he has any knowledge or info, and he's probably not interested in answering my questions. But if it's a fellow pilot that's selling his airplane, a lot of times we're just always happy to talk aviation or talk about our airplanes, share useful tips. So it's a great resource to be able to see who's selling what and save that information for the future. Anyway, I'm talking too much, so let's move on. So let's take a look at this one. It seems nice, but we have a very basic panel. So this panel is in need of updating. The propeller, I'm not sure it's a constant speed. I'll have to double check on that. The interior is basic, but it looks decent. You can tell that this person was kind of like a budget flyer, or perhaps this airplane hasn't flown in a while. The David Clark's headset, that's usually, in my opinion, what budget flyers use instead of like having a Bose. When's the last time this flew? It says it has a nice engine. When did it fly last? Let's go check the live tracker. And it flew last in 2021, basically based on the ADS-B record. So let's go see what they say about this. Mark II. Oh, well, you'll have to double check to make sure it is really a Mark II. Sometimes people say things are a certain version, but that's not always true. Let's see, Garmin 430, blah, blah, blah. Condition inspection, May 2023. So it looks like it has a condition inspection, but it doesn't look like it's flown. Does it even have ADS-B? It has a 327 transponder. It may not have ADS-B. So it may have flown, but the last flight record may simply be because that's how they flight planned it. On FlightAware, it will show when either the ADS-B is in the airplane, and it always shows all the routes and tracks, or if you file a flight plan, it will also show up on FlightAware. So if you don't have ADS-B but you file a flight plan, it will show up on FlightAware, just so you know. Anyway, so what's my opinion on this one? I like the potential of it. It sounds like it has a good engine and low time. It hasn't flown for a while, and I know that airplanes that sit for a while, the compressions go down and so forth. So I would just want to double check on this condition inspection, see the compressions. It's going to burn 10 gallons an hour, so it has 4 hours of fuel. That's fine. The Prince Prop Flex pitch, I'm not sure what that is. I'd want to look into that prop. But my guess is it's not a constant speed, probably because this was a cheaper option, this prop. And looking at the cheaper interior, the lack of investment in the panel, my guess is this person wanted to build the cheapest possible Lancair 360, which is fine. But you need to factor that in if you're going to consider buying this. So let's go look at that other 360, the other Lancair 360. We're becoming kind of pros on this, right? And let's see what the other one looks like and who's selling that. I think that was down here. Oh, here it is. So Sam Muncie is selling a Lancair 360. Then there's another one below. Let's go see this one. So on this one, looks fine. Nothing yet, 110,000. So in the ballpark, that's what they seem to be valuing Lancair 360s at in terms of asking price. Again, a basic panel. I mean, it's got more equipment than the previous one. It's got the front hinge door. That's nice. I forgot to check what type of door the other one had. But yeah, basic equipment. You can look up the flight aware, see if it has ADS-B. I don't think it really matters. You can do the same exercise for yourselves, checking to see when's the last time it flew, etc. A lot of you will already know all these tricks. But on the Pinky, this canopy was hinged in two spots on each side, and it would basically, it wouldn't fold upwards like this. It would kind of like slide forward on these attach points. Anyway, I digress. What's it got? Great paint. Sure. If the paint's in good condition, you can say great paint. Just not sure this is trendy anymore. This kind of beige bone color white. Not sure that was a good choice. But who am I to talk about? I had a pink plane, which is now sold, by the way. Of course, I mentioned that earlier. But yeah, so we're going through this, and I mean, it looks fine. There's not that many photos. That's disappointing, which makes me think that this interior might just be basic. This feels like another basic 360. And so now if we backtrack to, oh, it's had plenty of flight time, look. All right. So it says total time 220, so they took an engine off another airplane. That's another sign that the person was building on a budget. They didn't put a new engine in it. Now, if we go back to, and let's say we say, oh, well, that's a, you know, that seems to be what the price is for 360s, because they're both asking in the lower hundreds, right? And now let's go to see this other one. Oh, this other one didn't have a price, so let's forget about that one. But it has sold for a while. Sorry, it's an auction, but it has flown for a while. So maybe that's a good thing to, maybe we'll check this out last, this auction. So remember, the 320, I'm at 72,000 asking price. Obviously, that's almost 50,000 less. And the 360 would get you maybe an extra 10 to 20 knots, but you'll burn an extra 3 gallons per hour. So you got to keep that in mind. Not sure what the useful weight would be on a 360. If there's a huge difference. In this one, it was just over 600 pounds. So there's plenty of useful weight on the 320. Anyway, let's go to the $170,000 one, and now you can see why he's asking 170, because he's just basically making the assumption that the asking prices from the other two people, which kind of are close to each other, he's going with the assumption that those are reasonable asking prices, and so he feels that his airplane is worth at least $50,000 more than the next best one, which is at 120. And the paint job is great. Now that I'm looking at it again, I can see some avionics that look more serious. I'll look up what he has exactly here in a moment in the description. He has some kind of a CD player, radio. That's cool. This looks like an engine monitor. Leather interior, very nice. It has the canopy that locks in the rear like this. That's different from the one we had. So yeah, it looks great. I mean, this is a nice looking airplane. I could see why they are wanting $50,000 more than the next highest price. And let's go back and look at that one. Now, oh, it's the same dealer. Okay, so he's basically saying this one we're asking 120, so we're going to ask $50,000 more for the other one because it's a nicer one. That makes sense, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that's what they'll get, but hey, the seller is allowed to ask whatever they want for their airplane. It's their airplane. They can do what they want. They can sell it quickly. They can sell it slowly or not sell it at all. I'm just curious about the canopy on this one, if it's the older original version, or if, nope, this is actually positive, I guess, if you are interested in this style of canopy, but this canopy tilts forward. Now on the 320, ours would on 2 attachment points, it would just move forward and hang over the cowling. This one actually tilts at the hinge point and moves forward. We haven't found it to be an issue, but I do personally prefer this style of canopy. Anyway, so let's go check that auction now. Oops. Let's go back to the auction one, see what's going on there. I didn't know about this until just now, so I'm curious. So in Texas Airspace Auctions, sounds interesting. Wow, it's flown a lot. I mean, that's a high time engine, high time airframe for a Lancair 360. That means that plane was flown. Oh, it's of course, it's Jimmy's World's Lancair 360, and he's done some videos about it. Well, I wish him all the best. Let's go see how much it's bidding for. He's got it for a penny. We'll see how many people. It'd be interesting to see what it goes for. Let's go see these photos, see how it compares. The paint is obviously, I would say, non-existent. He has the similar canopy to what we had on the 320, which is the one that goes up and then moves to the fore of the airplane. Cool. Nice. All right. You see the canopy on this one is like the Pinky, and it's basically on two hinges, and it just slides forward into position. It's fine. And it has a couple of clamps on each side to keep the canopy down in position. I prefer the other version, but this is fine. Oh, 3-bladed prop. That's nice. And I wonder if it's variable pitch or fixed pitch. Can't really tell from this picture. These are not your standard looking controls. Maybe you can tell from some of his videos. But the panel is pretty basic. Nothing fancy here. And the interior is basic. So I would argue that it has a lot of potential. And I would just want to make sure the engine is not making any oil and has good compressions. But yeah, hopefully make somebody happy. Maybe they can get this for a good price. It would be interesting to see what price they get, because that will provide a baseline for what the value of these go for. And you can then backtrack from the baseline, add additional monies for better interior, better avionics, better engine, and so on and so forth. So yeah. Anyway, so back to Pinky and how we felt that we were being really reasonable, and I think we were, and I think we've made a happy buyer. We're happy sellers, happy buyers. Everyone's happy. So I think that should be the spirit of any aviation transaction, is that you want a win-win. You want them to feel like they get a good deal. You want to feel comfortable with how much you're selling it for, and ultimately enjoy watching their adventures, them flying around. And you never know, one day they might be selling it again, and they might be interested in your next airplane. So you just want to create relationships like that. To some degree, if you're an aviation enthusiast, you have the responsibility to find a caretaker for the airplane, a custodian, I should say, who will make the best use of the airplane, have adventures, keep the aviation community alive, rather than trying to always get the max for your aircraft, and souring potentially a member of our community when even though they paid full price or your asking price or some high price, then they have an unforeseen problem with the airplane, and now they're really in the hole, and it just bitters them and sours them about their purchase. And I think I can relate to that, being on the buyer's side, because I did so with the Quest Air Venture that I own. That was a purchase where I basically bought this airplane from a distance remotely. I didn't negotiate too hard because I wanted something that was airworthy, flying, and very capable. And I was assured that that was what the airplane was. And I sent someone out to check out the airplane. That person played down the defects in the airplane, notably the leaks and other things in the fuel leaks. And as soon as I got it, I wasn't able to fly it because it had a gear malfunction. So all in all, it was a terrible experience because well, for two reasons. One is my own fault. I should have done a pre-buy and be willing to buy a professional, and I shouldn't have trusted that person to look out for me. And the other thing was I should have realized that the strategy of trying to buy something at market price, market asking price, whatever it is, and expecting everything to work and not have any problems is too hopeful. Airplanes are sometimes delicate machines. They need a lot of maintenance, and they're not built like tanks. And you should never think, oh, I'll pay him his asking price. If he took super good care of it, nothing bad's going to happen. No, bad things do happen. In my case, it was as soon as it was delivered, it had a nose gear malfunction. That then subsequently grounded the airplane, and then other unfortunate things happen, which you can look up in the right-hand corner and click on the link to see the video of what happened with the flying egg. But by no means should you be hopeful or expecting a plane that you paid full price for to never have any issues. Quite the opposite. I think the good rule of thumb in the buying and selling airplanes is, if you're buying an airplane for 100, expect there to be $50,000 worth of problems. 50% of the value of the airplane. You get one for 50,000, expect to have to spend 25,000. I think that's a good rule of thumb to apply. And if you're at the limit, let's say you're buying a $100,000 airplane and that's your limit, you're not going to have no spare change for this. You're setting yourself up for trouble. If you can only afford $100,000, buy a $60,000 airplane or a $70,000 airplane. Leave yourself some room for an engine overhaul, a prop strike, whatever it is. It could be your own fault from how you're unfamiliar with the airplane and you just start flying it and you do something stupid. But a lot of the times it's unforeseen or undisclosed problems with the airplane. You should factor in extra expense. And I made a huge mistake with the Quest Air. Two, obviously, hiring the wrong person to kind of look out for me, but also, my biggest mistake was not negotiating harder. This plane, the Quest Air, had been on the market for a while. It was always the same asking price, and when we started negotiating, he didn't budge a little bit, and I feel like I was overconfident in buying that airplane. Anyway, so that's my mea culpa, my 2 cents on a Saturday morning, confiding that in general we do okay. I do okay buying an airplane and ultimately selling it. But for the moment, it's more negative than positive. But if you don't try and you never buy anything, you'll never accumulate the experience necessary to avoid a lot of these mistakes. So you have to be willing to fail in order to get the planes you want, to have the experiences of flying different airplanes. Another thing that I find advantageous about owning planes and multiple airplanes, and I don't care how many planes I own or sell, it doesn't matter to me, but you can't just go test drive an airplane you might be interested in. It's very difficult. I mean, you could, I guess, reach out to the owner of an airplane or the type of airplane you're interested in, say, hey, can you take me for a flight so I can experience what it's like, etc. But owning an airplane is the ultimate way of finding out if it's gonna work for you, if the mission's gonna work, and all that. You can try and have your Excel spreadsheet to figure it out, ahead of time, and you can do that as many times as you want. But until you really try it for yourself, you won't know. So on paper, the 320 and the 360 were great airplanes that I like the performance. They fit my they absolutely fit what I aspire to fly in terms of performance. These 200 mile per hour plus airplanes that don't burn that much fuel. In this case, very little, 7 gallons per hour. Totally fine with that. I mean, I'm not obsessed with trying to get the best fuel flow or lowest costs, but the 200 mile per hour plus is what I was after. And so on paper it was great, but I didn't really fit in it very well. I was uncomfortable, and ultimately my partner flew it mostly. And when it was time for him to move on, we just decided to sell it, and I was okay with that too. I'm trying not to get too attached to each individual airplane. So yeah, I mean, in the 20 years that I've been flying, I've owned maybe a dozen planes, and so one more for the record. And I look forward to seeing this plane continue its adventures throughout the country, and hopefully I'll cross paths with it again. It brought a lot of smiles on my face. And I got a lot of pleasure out of making videos about it, and I saw the reaction from people, the crowd. It was all positive. So it's really great when not only you have a very high performance airplane, but it's unique in its appearance, and people think it's cute, and it attracts a lot of attention. It possibly even gets people interested in aviation. So the more unique you can make your airplane, whether it's just simply with paint in this case, the better, I feel. Yeah, let's do things like putting Pink Panthers on the tail of your airplane, put a Roadrunner, put a cartoon character, whatever you can do to make aviation fun. It's awesome, in my opinion. I'm just a big kid, and I think a lot of us are, and I think the more we do that, the more aviation will do well, general aviation. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for listening and see you next time.